Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Music Den. I'm your host, Armando Venditti. I want to welcome you all back to another segment of Album Spotlight. Now, the artist I'm going to be talking about today is an artist I've mentioned before as part of a group, but I've never talked about them as a solo artist. They are Robert Fripp, and the album in the spotlight is Exposure. Now, if you're a fan of progressive rock, you know who Robert Fripp is, co-founder and mainstay member of King Crimson. He's also worked with other artists such as Peter Gabriel, Brian Eno, David Byrne, Daryl Hall and John Oates. Now, at the end of the Red Tour with King Crimson, Robert Fripp did decide to disband King Crimson in '74 because he thought that at that point they had come as far as they could musically. He ended up moving to Hell's Kitchen in New York City around 76, 77, and basically soaked up everything that was going on there musically. You had New Wave was just starting up. Punk was pretty much at its apex with bands such as, the Ramones and Blondie were just starting up then. And Robert Fripp also worked with Blondie. He did get a call from Brian Eno and David Bowie to fly over to Germany to contribute some guitar work to the music that they were working on at the time. And he would end up contributing guitars to the title track and single Heroes. And he also worked with David Bowie in 1980 on Scary Monsters and Super Creeps. He also produced the two albums during this time period prior to the release of Exposure. Those albums are Peter Gabriel's Scratch, second release, and Daryl Hall of Daryl Hall and John Oates, his solo debut album, Sacred Songs, which was recorded in August of '77. But due to RCA's reluctance to release it because of, according to them, lack of commercial viability, the album was released in March of 1980. Okay. Now, the idea for Exposure was that it was going to be part of a trilogy, a loosely based trilogy of albums, trio of albums that Robert Fripp either had worked on directly or collaborated and produced. But due to the fact that Sacred Songs was not released until March of 1980, that idea of the trilogy was thrown out the window. Now, again, Exposure was released in April of 1979 through Polydor and AG Records, respectively. It was recorded from June of '77 to January 1979. The album was produced by Robert Fripp and has a playing time of 45 minutes and 28 seconds. Now, musically, it's listed as experimental, art rock, post-punk, and ambient, and experimental it is. Now, playing on the album, you have such musicians as Peter Gabriel, Peter Hamill of Vandergraaf Generator on vocals, Daryl Hall of Daryl Hall and John Oates, Tony Levin on bass, Jerry Marotta on drums, Phil Collins on drums, uh, basically a who's who of artists at that point in time. Now, the original idea for Exposure was to have Daryl Hall provide vocals for all of the tracks on the album. There are 16 in total. And the reason being was that, again, he had produced Sacred Songs for Daryl Hall, and the two got along very well. And Robert Fripp had uh, cited Daryl Hall as having one of the most versatile vocal abilities than anyone he'd ever met at the time. And he honestly felt that if Sacred Songs had been released in '77, it would have caught on with the beginnings of new wave and punk rock because he felt he did have that power in his voice. But unfortunately, that wasn't to happen. And there is a version of Exposure featuring Daryl Hall on vocals on all of the tracks. But we'll get into that in a sec. Now, as I said with Exposure, it's listed as experimental and art rock. It is experimental. Pretty much it has a beginning, a middle, and an ending. It starts off with a track called Preface. Before I get into that, though, I should say that all of the tracks range in playing time from like 40 seconds to like 4 minutes and 43 seconds. So again, it goes all over the place. And each track is a different, it's a different um, avenue to go down. Okay. But pretty much, Robert Fripp wanted you to be on guard with this album. He didn't want to lull you into a sense of security. Every single song on this album is a different trip. It's a different road to go down, a different experience to be had. Okay. Again, starts off with the track Preface, clocking in at 1 minute and 16 seconds. And what it is a spoken piece with Robert Fripp talking to either management or a record company rep, saying that he wanted to play him some of the music he was working on because he felt that it was commercial. Okay. Then it goes into track number two, You Burn Me Up, I'm a Cigarette, featuring Daryl Hall on lead vocals and Jerry Morada, sorry, on drums. Very much in my notes, post-punk, new wave kind of feel. Very forceful vocal from Daryl Hall. At this point, Daryl Hall was known for, pop rock like Blue Eyed Soul with Sarah Smile and Rich Girl. And this was quite a departure from what Daryl Hall was working on previous. But he makes it work. It does work. Okay. Very short song, 2 minutes and 24 seconds. And it's got to be said too, a lot of these songs either fade out early when you don't expect them to, or they come to like what they call the cold stop or dead stop quite quickly. After You Burn Me Up, I'm a Cigarette comes the track Breathless. In my notes, I have your heavy rhythm guitars and great synths on this track. Next up is the co-write he had done with Peter Hamill called Disengage, featuring Phil Collins on drums. Um, I'm not a fan of Peter Hamill's vocals. I I'm gonna get some shtick from that, but I really am not a fan of the vocals. I find them very harsh, very jarring, and no, to me they don't work. But that's my opinion. After Disengage is the second track featuring Daryl Hall on lead vocals and Phil Collins on drums called North Star. It's a co-write between Robert Fripp, Daryl Hall, and Joanne Walton. And in my notes for North Star, I have uh, really relaxed vibe, shimmering guitars, and a great vocal delivery from Daryl Hall. Fan bloody tastic. This should have been a single from the album. Um, but as soon as you get into it, it's gone. It's 3 minutes and 6 seconds. Now, Chicago is up next, another co-write with Daryl Hall and Joanne Walton and Robert Fripp. In my notes, I have here heavy bass and drum pattern and nice piano. The piano on this track is very prominent. Okay. Up next is a track called NY3, 2 minutes and 16 seconds, frenetic arrangement and fast paced and very experimental. Okay. Track eight, the last track on side one of the vinyl release, is called Mary and uh, clocks in at 2 minutes and 6 seconds. In my notes, I have your nice guitar chords, very relaxed feel. The vocals that Tara Roche of the Roche Sisters delivers, for me, as I scratch my chin, very I was going to say experimental. No, spoken word vibe. Okay. There's an artist, Canadian singer-songwriter, guitarist, producer called named Jane Siberry. And when I hear Tara Roche's vocals, I almost am reminded of Jane Siberry's vocals. But I do prefer Jane Siberry's vocals over Tara Roche. I just find her vocals on this track, if it was Jane Siberry doing it, would have been amazing if that was ever possible. Um, that's the end of side one. Side two starts off with the title track Exposure. That is a co-write with Peter Gabriel. And in my notes, I have your solid drums. Vocals for me on this track are too much. Tara Roche, when she's doing the vocal delivery, she's very direct and very in your face, uh, almost screaming. Okay. And it's very hard to take. Um, I can't like I'll listen to it because it's on the album, but if I had my choice, I would have left it as an instrumental piece. Okay. Coming up next, as I adjust myself, is a track called Hayden 2, and it's a track only like 2 minutes and 53 seconds. In my notes, I have your heavy guitar chords um, with spoken word samples over it. Um, Again, experimental beyond belief with this track. Urban Landscape is track number 3 on side 2. This is the um, one of the tracks that is featured, sorry, on Daryl Hall's album Sacred Songs. Um, 2 minutes and 35 seconds. In my notes, I have your overlapping guitar textures. What he's doing is he's overlapping guitar chords and a lot of use of sustained notes and just weaving a tapestry like a wall of guitar texture on this track. Great track, very atmospheric, right? And this track would all also feature well on Heroes or even Low from David Bowie. Track 5, as I look at my notes here, is another I'd say uh, track 4, I should say. Sorry, my bad. Track 4 is a track called "I May Not Have Had Enough of Me, but I've Had Enough of You." Again, another co-write with Joanne Moulton and Robert Fripp. And in my notes, I have your frenetic arrangement, new wave feel, good rhythm guitar, but very experimental. Again, track 4 and then track 5 on side 2 of the album. As I go down my notes here, next up we have Water Music 1, instrumental piece, guitar and synth passages that are interwoven with one another. You pretty much can't tell where the guitars end and the synths begin, and vice versa. But a beautiful piece of music, 1 minute and 27 seconds on this track, just beautiful. Up next is a stripped down version, I should say, of Here Comes the Flood with Peter Gabriel. This track was first featured on Peter Gabriel's first debut solo release, also known as Car. That version on Car, according to Peter Gabriel, he didn't like the production on that track, which was handled by Bob Ezrin. So he took the track and stripped it down to more of a very calm, soothing track featuring great piano chords on the track. It's all piano with guitar flourishes by Fripp. Just amazing. Just amazing. Up next is Water Music 2, which continues from Water Music 1. Great synth and guitar textures, pretty much that are developed into a wall of sound. Okay, very layered, very textured. You just sort of wrapped in the music when you hear it. And the final track on the album is called Postscript, where it's 40 seconds long, and it's basically, I take it as Fripp talking to his friends in the studio about the record company's reaction about releasing the album the music as an album, and whether or not they liked it or not. You can hear them talking and laughing, but it's pretty much like just an outro piece. So there you have it, guys. Exposure. Now, from Robert Fripp. Now, I should tell you that there is a massive 32 disc set of Exposure called Exposures, and it features 27 discs, CDs, sorry, plus 5 Blu-rays, Blu-ray audios, featuring the album Exposure in different stages. And um, on that box set, you have the album remixed by Steven Wilson. I think it's disc 7 or 8, that version of Exposure that is mixed by Steven Wilson. I believe it's called Edition 4. Okay. And there is a version of Exposure featuring Daryl Hall on all the vocals for the tracks. Okay. The way that Robert Fripp intended it to be released. So if you know this album, please let me know down there, down below in the comments, what you think of the album. For me, I do like it. It's taken me a little bit to get used to. I just got the box set on Friday and I'm going to dive into that. It's a lot of music to cover, and it's a lot of information to sonically digest, but eventually I will. I do like the album. I do love Robert Fripp's work. I think he's great. It is going to take me a bit of time to get used to it, but I will eventually. Anyways, that's it for now. Uh, Please let me know again what you think of Exposure. Do you have the box set? What do you think of the box set? Tell me down in the comments below what you think of Robert Fripp or what you think of Exposure or Exposure is the box set. Coming up on the channel, and we're doing a discussion with Jim Bricker, an album discussion on Steven Wilson, Hand Cannot Erase. That's coming up soon. And that's going to be a really good discussion because Jim Bricker loves that album. And yeah, we've got more ideas coming up, more shows. We've got also with Bill Schuster and Jim Bricker and Ken Cheshire, we're going to be doing the Genesis album ranking, a complete album ranking. This time we're including from Genesis to Revelation and Calling All Stations. So all 15 Genesis albums, all ranked. It's going to be a long show. So when that happens, sit back, grab a drink, grab some food, and enjoy the show. That's it for now. Please click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to keep yourselves on top of any new content I've got coming up. All right. And please look after yourselves and one another. And I'll see you soon with another video. Bye for now.